Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone across the globe joining us today. This is Stephanie from Acquia. We're thrilled to kick off today's webinar, Composable Commerce, Conquer the Unknown Future, presented by both Acquia and our partner, ElasticPath. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. If you have any audio issues, please send them to me in the Q&A tab and I will assist you. If you have any questions for the presenters, we ask that you please submit them in the Q&A tab as well. We love questions, so feel free to shoot away, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. Slides and recording of this webinar will be posted to acquia.com and also sent to you via email within the next 2 days. Without further delay, I will pass it over to our speakers.
Hey, I'm Anthony. I'm a digital strategist at Acquia with Brian from ElasticPath. Thanks for joining, and thanks for watching if you're watching the recording. Brian, do you want to?
Yeah, so hi everyone. Glad to be here with Anthony. My name is Brian Gilmore, and I am the Global Director of Technical Sales at ElasticPath.
And when we were thinking about this presentation, I kind of thought of a personal story first. So pretty much, I eat pizza every Friday. Pretty standard. And before the pandemic, I would love to go to a pizzeria about 10 minutes from my home, take family, friends, drink wine. Really great experience. We loved it. But since COVID, I haven't been ordering from them. And until very recently, even just a few days ago, I didn't even really reflect why. It all happened really fast, like in a matter of minutes. You can go to the next slide, Brian. I had just finished work and my family was pressing me to order pizza as soon as possible, which is reasonable, like never get between Italian-blooded people and pizza. When I didn't find my favorite pizzeria on DoorDash, I just picked another restaurant. It was pretty close to unconscious. As much as I love this restaurant's pizza, my brain didn't even register the possibility of calling them for delivery. Like it just didn't. My brain didn't even consider that option. DoorDash is simple, it's elegant commerce, it's a simple experience focused on me. And by the way, DoorDash knows I love Indian food about once a month, and my pizzeria has absolutely no clue. My customer lifetime value to that pizzeria has dropped because of the outdated CX. And worse yet, to get me back, that pizzeria now needs to pay the CX middleman because DoorDash owns the audience. Like third-party marketplaces with convenient CX, now DoorDash is in control, not the pizzeria. And I've been thinking about that, and maybe take a moment yourself to kind of reflect on your brand's own shopping CX, or the shopping CX that you've recently developed for a brand. Like, would you honestly use it compared to other options? Actually, have you even considered the other options that are out there? Maybe there are broader marketplaces finding your customers before you find them because they offer a broader, simpler marketplace commerce experience. Next slide, Brian. But at this point, like it's not just pizza, and we all know it, it's pretty much everything. Luxury retail customers, insurance customers of mine have been interested in commerce. Technology or healthcare have come to me asking for commerce solutions. I even have a B2B2B financial services customer working on commerce right now. Legacy brands of all types, shapes, sizes are getting Amazoned by third-party marketplaces who make these broader offerings with friendly, proactive, personalized commerce experiences. Heck, I don't even call it e-commerce anymore. Like that's, since March, I just call it commerce. So at some point, my brand customers are like, let's do it. And then they realize commerce can be really hard. Complicated buyer journeys, integration challenges, limited resources, unknown future needs, and we don't want to upset the rest of the site experience. And unlike pizza, many of my customers, notably regulated ones, have complicated product catalogs with varying degrees of hierarchy, complexity, and maturity. So it can be a bit much, like you kind of come in all happy and ready to go, and then reality hits. So I guess, Brian, like with all these common challenges, or any ones that your customers have, my first question is, how do we iteratively introduce commerce functionality within our current experience landscape?
Yeah, that's a great question, Anthony. And certainly now I'm motivated by pizza, so I'll have to answer in a way that can get us all to the great solution. So one of the things that we're going to talk about today is the 4 tenets of composable commerce. And I think this will help answer the question of how do you iteratively move your platform or your experience into the commerce realm. So what do we mean by composable commerce? This is really about bringing together the different components or building blocks of your commerce experience into a best of suite approach for you. And those 4 tenets include modularity. So if I wanted to swap out some part of my commerce experience and bring in something that is good for me, I need to be able to do that independently of all my other components, which then leads to the next point. It has to be interoperable. So things that are based on open standards obviously are more interoperable than ones that aren't. And they also facilitate the ability to have customization. They also need to be flexible and use modern technology. So you've probably heard things like mock, it needs to be microservices based, API, built for the cloud and headless in order to enable your composable commerce. And last but not least, it also needs to be business centric. All of this is for nothing if you can't empower business users to respond to those changes rapidly. The first thing you have to do is choose. In your pizza example there, Anthony, you're losing out on customers, but in the time of COVID, you also need only to not only retain your customers, but also perhaps take on some new customers that you hadn't had before. And that growth strategy means you have to unlock new business models, and you also have to adapt to these new changing business environments. The first choice is obviously a traditional monolithic platform. These are great because they're all-in-ones. Everything is there. You don't have to worry about different components that you would add together. But they're also template-based. They're part of a suite, which means that your experiences tend to be very vanilla, very rigid. And quite frankly, if you need to customize things, it can take a fair bit of time. And that's where, if you make the composable commerce choice, those aspects that we just mentioned, the modularity, the interoperability, the flexibility, and business centric, actually enable you to very quickly get to market, to actually build those experiences without worrying about a big bang theory when you go live, and also to get that business value very quickly.
How do customers commonly get that value quickly? Like where were they? How do you get there? Like iterative versus big bang. What are some thoughts on how to choose?
Yeah, so one of the things that you'll have to choose in your approach, and I think your pizza example is a great one. You have to understand, do I want to invest in my site that I already have? Because typically your experience is something that you've already thought about, that you know and you love. And if you've built that on Acquia, you know that it's already rich. So you have to make it transactable in commerce. So why, your first decision when you're making this choice is, why do I want to throw all that away, put it on a platform and reinvent it from scratch? Why not just add commerce to what you have as a starting point? So that's the first thing that folks are looking for, is how do I take what I have and get to market very quickly? So let's talk a little bit about how you would ensure some long-term success with composable commerce. We have several examples of people in the marketplace that have already embraced composable commerce concepts. For example, some of ElasticPath's customers include Intuit with the TurboTax product, or T-Mobile when they launched their new iPhone releases. They're all using these types of composable commerce concepts. But the key thing here is they all started with their core platform and they added something to it. For example, adding support for a mobile shopping experience, or migrating off of their legacy system to reimagine their digital vision. Another customer, America's Pharmacy, actually was able to take their site and move into commerce with ElasticPath in just 4 weeks.
All right. Well, what did they do? Like, this 4 weeks sounds pretty fast. Like, what?
It is. Yeah.
Where were they, and where did they go? Help me. I don't know.
Yeah, great question. So if you're not familiar with America's Pharmacy, They started out as a website where you could go look up coupons for pharmaceutical products. And you would take that, you would print the coupon, you would take it to your local pharmacy, and you would get, $10, $20, whatever, off of the purchase that you were going to make. But America's Pharmacy wanted to expand their experience. They wanted to be a bigger part of that customer's healthcare journey. And so they wanted to take their website and actually make it transactable. So rather than just kind of handing off the deal to someone else to actually complete, they wanted to allow their customers to purchase on their website. They loved their website, but they didn't have the ability to put something in the cart and sell it. So what they did with Elastic Path, the key is, how did they launch in 4 weeks? Well, they certainly didn't build it from scratch and from the ground up, because that would obviously take much longer. They took their existing site and they used those composable commerce concepts to pull in the APIs that supported the price, the product, the cart. And that's how they enabled their existing experience and started to transact. So now customers can go purchase their prescription, their whatever pharmaceutical product they were looking for, and then they would go to their local pharmacy and merely pick it up. So now America's Pharmacy was taking a much bigger share of that experience and gaining marketplace share as well by using these innovative concepts. So we have to also think about unlocking business value. When you look at the graph here, if you're looking at the blue chart, this is the typical velocity and timeline for other platforms that typically embrace those kind of monolithic concepts. And in the orange are platforms like Elastic Path that embrace more of the composable commerce type of approach. When you start, you'll see that the monolith may have a slight advantage, and that's because they have more of the out-of-the-box features and out-of-the-box designs, just due to the nature of their platform. But remember what I said, you typically will get a vanilla experience. It's very static, not changeable. And who wants your website to look like everybody else's websites nowadays? That doesn't give you any differentiation or any advantage to move into the marketplace. It may seem counterintuitive, but having more of those features out of the box is not necessarily better when you're trying to create that bespoke experience. So as your project progresses and you can see the initial launch expanding into the direct-to-consumer market, maybe even launching additional touch points like an augmented reality app or a kiosk experience, you can see that the trajectory for a composable commerce platform like Elastic Path increases. The velocity actually goes up. And that's because the other platforms are still mired in development. So if you kind of think about the Gartner quote here, I think this is a great quote from Gartner. You cannot assume that granular is necessarily better. And that's because those things can actually increase your development time, your costs, and create a lot of challenges. You don't want to spend time unwinding those features and customizing them. You want to actually move right to the type of experiences and requirements that will make you different from your competition.
Yeah, it's usually like some blend of out of the box and composable. I find out of the box makes some very grumpy brand marketers. Do customers typically come to you with like, here's our prioritized use cases. We've done a value assessment. We think here's the priority based on potential impact and ease, or is that something you help with, or how do customers how does this usually go down?
Yeah, that's a great question too. The customers typically have a business goal in mind, but they don't know exactly how to reach that. So they'll come to me and they'll be like, hey, Brian, we know that we want to go live. We want it to be iterative, and we love our brand and our experience, but we don't want to just throw it all away, right? We want to take our investments that we've already paid for, and we want to use those again. So what we'll do is we'll help them identify how they can take some aspect of their site, whether it's part of their, one part of their brand or one part of their architecture, and begin to move that over. So that's the benefit of composable commerce is you take one bit of the Lego, swap it out, and you move to the next one, and your customers see incremental value and progress, but without all the risk of cutting over your site at one time. We call this, so when you're looking at the different solution architecture disciplines, we call this the strangler pattern. You take one bit, you strangle it, you replace it with something new, and that's how you get that continuous value for your customers. So helping them find those components to go on that journey is how we help folks.
And Legos make everybody happy, even brand marketing.
They do. I love Legos myself. So let's talk a little bit about commerce as a team sport. I didn't know I was in a sport until I was talking to my colleagues one day, and they were like, yeah, this is, we're all together trying to figure this out with all of our audiences. So who are those audiences? Well, they're the business, obviously, the technical teams, and very specifically the developers who are going to be creating those experiences. And they're really interested in three things or three themes. That's control, speed, and trust. So for the business user, they're all about unlocking growth, unlocking the revenue, the experience. So they need things like robust business user tooling. They need to be able to take packaged business capabilities or ready to use applications and pull those in to gain their speed. And through it all, they need to have trust. They need to know that their site is going to be up during Black Friday and during other difficult peak times. But a technical audience, they're thinking about, okay, I need to now transverse all of these different components in my composable framework for my architecture. So they have this holistic view. They also, the holistic view that they need to actually manage and control. But they're at the same time, they're thinking, all right, my business is pushing for me to unlock this growth. So how do I extend this? And I need to do it quickly. So I have to be able to optimize and change multiple components at one time. And of course, they're also dependent on the world-class operations and support. They want to be able to change the data, configure things in their commerce platform, push the changes out when they need to without disrupting the operations. Yeah. And finally, at the developer level, they're wanting to innovate because that's what is ultimately driving the business. So part of their control aspect is they need to own the code, that not just the configuration. Configuration is always good, but the code is going to help them get that control. They also don't need complicated APIs or platforms that provide hundreds and hundreds of APIs because that's confusing, right? Too many choices. They need simple, powerful, industry standard APIs that are very easy to learn. And part of their trust factor is being able to go in and learn all about the platform, get the references, get the examples to use. It's all about making their job a little bit easier to unlock the team sport for them to meet the same goal seamlessly together.
I've actually done each of these roles over time. So it's very exciting to kind of see it all consolidated into one table. And I come across organizations of different levels of customer-centric maturity. There's some heavily siloed, some very lean. And this, the composable method, one of my favorite secret benefits of this is it kind of forces cross-functional collaboration, hopefully in the form of some user stories, so you can drive iterative success and be ready for those unknown, whether probably not COVID next year, it's probably flying snake or whatever, but for whatever that comes out, we're ready for it. So one of my favorite secret benefits of this is it sort of empowers lean organizations who run agile marketing operations. So I love this table.
Great. Well, let's look a little bit more deeply for an example here of composable commerce with Elastic Path's Commerce Cloud. So in this chart, you'll see some very common commerce components. These form the core of any solution. So in the blue, you have components for Elastic Path, and that is pricing, cart, checkout, the product, the catalog, all the things that you know and love that have to be a part of any commerce platform. But then you start to move out into the periphery and you see there's all these other things that I might need to fill in my entire solution to make my site transactable. I might need a payment gateway, right? America's Pharmacy, they didn't take payment before, and now they need to figure out what's the best payment gateway. They might also need a PIM. If you have a very large catalog or large teams, You might have an external pin that you're already using, and you want to keep that as a part of your overall solution. So how do you add that in? And of course, if you're coming from the experience side and you're on Acquia, then your natural question is, how do I tie that together with Composable Commerce and something like Elastic Path Commerce Cloud? So the concepts here are all supported by things like the API integration and that flexible architecture that I mentioned. So modular, interoperable, flexible, business-centric are all core parts of the architecture.
And I'm not sure I've ever had a project where a stakeholder didn't show up late stage and go, hey, by the way, there's this point of sale system or whatever, make it work. And you're like, there's always a peripheral system.
Especially when you're going from brick and mortar to online, or vice versa.
Yes, that's been a theme this year. Absolutely.
It's a very common COVID scenario, by the way. So let's start going through those three aspects. So starting with control. So what do we mean by control? Let's dig a little bit more into that. So if you look on the right there, you'll see administer, customize, and compose. So if you're administering your site, you want to be able to make some of these changes on the fly, right? In the traditional platform, maybe you had to, change the code, push something out to production, wait for it to go live. Maybe you made a mistake, you have to do it all over again. And if you're on the business side with, making changes in the business user tooling, how many times have you had to swap between your authoring in the content experience and then in your commerce tool? So you have one tool, you make a change, you have to go to the other tool and make a corresponding change. And that can be, quite frankly, a little painful. But when you're embracing a composable commerce architecture, one that is API driven like Elastic Path, those APIs can be embedded directly into your authoring experience. So that if you needed to make a change, you make it all in one place. If you need to know what are all the promotions as you're creating a web page for your upcoming shopping event, you just make the API call and it shows up in your authoring experience. Here's the list of all the promotions. It's great. Now, when you look at customization, right, everybody ends up at the end of the day implementing some sort of unique business requirement. If you're not doing that, then obviously you're not differentiating your business as much. But the key is, how do you implement these unique business requirements and follow your composable commerce principles when your platform is SaaS? You're not able to go in and change the SaaS platform. So typically you're wrapping that with serverless functions or integrating using webhooks to bring in some of those other third-party apps or packaged business capabilities that we chatted about. So you need to make sure that your architecture supports that ability to customize. And then at the end of the day, you also don't overlook the compose part of composable commerce. That means taking your core business capabilities that we chatted about, but adding in those packaged business capabilities. If I have something that's in the market and I want to bring that together, if you want to snap those Legos together in a different way, then that's how you do it. But it also has to be, still headless. How else are you going to add that augmented reality experience or that mobile experience or the in-store kiosk that we just chatted about? And then, of course, make sure it's that modern mock architecture. Because if you're not having that, then it really defeats the purpose and makes your customization and integration that much more difficult. So let's look a little bit here on speed as well. So when we talk about the hallmarks of speed in a composable commerce architecture, you're looking at how do you learn it, how do you deploy it, and how do you iterate once you have it. So the key tenets of learning that include having comprehensive documentation. So you want to go out to the doc site, there should be examples, a personalized developer education curriculum, and even more specifically, best practices and things that you can pull from the library. You don't want to start from scratch or reinvent the wheel. You want to be able to learn these things very quickly and very intuitively. When you look at deployments, right, with a SaaS model, you should be able to deploy on demand. This isn't one of those things where in the old days you would take something and you plan 3 weeks ahead of time, go through your change committee, and voila, it's out. You want to be able to move when the marketer says, hey, I want to launch a new campaign for the holiday. or when the business scenario changes like it has very rapidly with COVID, you want to do that on demand. And then you also want to look for a marketplace with all these third-party applications. So you may not know today that you need something, but you want to have a platform where you can go grab those third-party applications when you need that and very rapidly bring those together with your composable commerce platform. And then when you look at the application library aspects, this is assets that you would think of as out-of-the-box examples or reference experiences. If I wanted to have a cart component in Acquia, I should be able to go grab an example of that without having to create that myself. And then when you look at iteration, if you want to iterate very quickly, you don't want a complicated API. You want something that is well designed, follows those level 2 REST principles, and is industry standard. If any vendor starts to customize their APIs too much, they become hard to iterate. And then finally, you want a platform that has great extensibility techniques and tools. And with that, you can begin to pull together your composable commerce solution with great speed. So finally, we look at the last tenet here, and that's trust. So when you look at all the things that you need for trust, the core part of this is you're not just trusting one platform, because one platform only makes up one part of your overall solution with composable commerce. So that's why we work together with Acquia. So together, Elastic Path and Acquia can provide your site in your commerce store with things like 99.99% availability, support around the clock, around the world. That extensive commerce expertise, like Anthony said a minute ago, many people haven't been through this journey and they need someone who has that experience to guide them to make those right choices. And things like cross-industry best practices. So when I talked about the strangler pattern, you need someone who can tell you, hey, this is the best way to move off of your platform and move into that modern experience. And don't overlook the things that are operational as well. When it comes time to scale up for the holiday, you want to be able to count on Acquia and Elastic Path to provide you with that highly available infrastructure. Does it grow on demand? If I put a sale out, will my site just spin and people not add to cart and then go to the next pizza place, like what Anthony said? And who thinks about security? I mean, the average shopper maybe not, but you and I should, because we want to stay out of the headlines. So you're looking for things like SOC 2 compliance, PCI compliance, and ensuring that these organizations bridge the gap and give the trust to the business users, the technical users and developers to create a really great experience.
Like, as 2020 has proven, we have no idea what this decade is going to bring, but open, composable, compliant platform with pre-integrated applications and components really mitigates the delivery risk overall. So yeah, are there questions?
Yes, we have a few questions. The first looks like it's for Brian. What are the common components people look for in a composable commerce approach?
Yeah, good question. So in some of the examples that we chatted about today, folks typically have an experience that they're starting with. And their first question is, well, how do I got a product, I can create a product detail page. How do I put a cart button there? So some of the components that they're typically asking for are things like, how do I add a tax engine? I need to calculate taxes across 50 states. You know, I have a very unusual payment gateway. I don't want to spend a lot of time building that. You know, does your SaaS solution support those types of things? And there could be other components too, like if I need to pull in you know, recommendations or the augmented reality library. There's a number of things that folks look for, but you know, most of them tend to be core components, and they're just not sure, like, you know, if I have my tax engine that my company already has, can I use that same one on the web? Yeah, those are some of the typical questions for components that people are asking today.
Awesome. And do individuals need to come with a solution in mind, or can they just come for advice?
If they had a solution in mind, that would be awesome, but most folks do not. As I mentioned earlier, they're coming with an idea or a concept or a problem or even a pain point. Maybe they've outgrown what they're on, or maybe all of a sudden folks can't get to their store because everybody's under a shelter-in-place order, for example. So we're offering that advice, and because we're great partners with Acquia, we know how to bring all these things together and how to pick some easy starting points. It's always like, what's the first step? If you think about the elephant analogy, everybody says, well, where do I nibble the tail? Do I nibble the trunk? Where do I start? So together we're able to make some of those suggestions to de-risk the approach to make your site transactable. But if you have pain points or even some initial goals in mind, those are great starting places. It's always great to have a straw man or an initial place that you want to start, and we can help you from there.
Awesome. I like the partnership piece there too. Looks like we have one last question. So if anyone does have any other questions, feel free to send them in the Q&A. But otherwise, this is our last one. So when implementing a new system, what are the common pitfalls or what should be avoided?
Yeah, I can answer that one as well. The most common pitfall we see are folks who want to go live with everything at the same time. They're so excited about embracing commerce or putting out a new experience that they just want to flip the switch and turn everything on. And that's a little bit of a risky approach, because with composable commerce, you want to make sure that all the pieces are working seamlessly together. So typically what we advise folks is start small, pick one product, one use case, one brand, something that gives you flexibility to test, but it's not just an integration concern. You want feedback from your customers. Is the experience that you envisioned the same one that they're expecting and liking? So you want to put that toe in the water. You want to avoid that flipping the light switch and everything going live at the same time, so that you can iterate, make it better, and again, like I said, avoid some of that risk.
Awesome. Well, that looks like those are our final questions. So obviously, thank you again to our speakers, Brian, Anthony, Path as well, the rest of the team there, and thank you all again for attending and actually participating in our webinar today. As a reminder, the slides and the recording of this webinar will be posted to acquia.com and also sent to you via email within the next few days. If you have any additional questions, please send them to marketing@theacquiateam.com,